Good evening, everyone, and you are welcome to our presentation for today. Ofiliamawina Magoa is my name, a representative from the early grade specialism. And today, we'll be focusing on learning as our main topic. So before we start, I want us to take a moment and think about this. What was the very last thing that you learned and that has truly stayed with you till now? What do you think actually made it easy for you to understand or even remember what you learned? Well, this question encourages us to reflect on how learning happens and why some of these learning experiences are more meaningful than the others. In our presentation, we'll be discussing the learning pyramid. We'll be discussing the concepts of learning, exploring the theories of learning, examining the learning pyramid. We'll also consider the psychology of learning. We will also further on look at problem-based learning, the conditions that support effective learning and meaningful learning. All these areas that has been mentioned will help us understand how learning actually occurs and how teaching can be improved. To begin with, it's very important that we understand the meaning of learning. So I'll start by giving out the definition of what learning is. Learning is understood as a process through which individuals develop new understanding, skills, values, depositions through experience. So from our explanation, we can see learning is not just about memorizing facts. When we say learning, it's not that you are memorizing facts or ideas for the sake of exams or tests or for the purpose of that you are being asked for. But learning is rather the act of making meaning from the experiences or the knowledge that has been gained. So learning is both a process and is also a product. So what comes out is what is the product. So I'll pause here and actually hand over to my next colleague to continue with the next section for the presentation. Thank you.
I'm praising and taking on from learning theories. So the first point talks about what learning theories are. They are organized to explain how people learn and keep knowledge. The second point talks about how learning theories are covered. So they look at mental, behavior, and social and feeling parts that affect learning. The third point is why teachers use the learning theories. They help teachers answer 3 maths related questions. Slide 6 talks about behavior theories of numeracy. We have the basic ideas, which talks about the change in behaviors caused by practice and reviews. And we have the law of effect, when a right answer gets a good reward. And we have in classrooms, teachers use praise, correction, and structure drills in early grade to make basic number skills accurate and automatic. My next colleague will continue for me. Thank you.
Okay, so continue with the next slide by looking at the meaning of theory. We'll be looking at the meaning of theory. So when we say theory, a theory is defined as a set of ideas, principles, hypotheses that explains or describes a phenomenon. So before a theory comes about, it goes through observations. There's collection of data, there's experiments that is collected to support its validity. So before a theory will come about, there have to be observations, there have to be data that have been collected, there have to be consistent experiments on that particular theory, so that when it comes into existence, there are going to be evidence that or backups that can prove that this theory actually really proves a fact. So theory, when all this is done, that's when theory comes out. So there are sets of ideas, principles that describes a particular phenomenon. And they are used in various disciplines. They are used in science, psychology, sociology, and areas of knowledge. So with theories, it helps students acquire knowledge and problem solving. Theories also helps with instructional strategies that comes out to enhance learning outcomes. We'll also further on look at learning theories. So we have various learning theories. We have the cognitive learning, we have the behaviorism, we have social learning theory. So all this learning theories is talking about is that they are systematic applications of how individuals acquire, how they process, and how they retain knowledge and skills. So it's divided into cognitive, behavioral, social, and emotional factors. So these learning theories help teachers understand how learners are able to grasp whatever is being taught. So however they process whatever is being taught, learning theories help teachers to understand the learning process of the individual. It also helps in instructional strategies and classroom interventions. I'll hand over to my next colleague to continue.
I'm Ansa Veronica and I take over from my colleague. So I'm talking about the behaviorist perspective on learning in numeracy. The behaviorists believe that learners learn through practical repetition and reinforcement. They believe that when the learners are learning, they are able to perform well and solve math problems when they are being corrected through rewards and feedbacks. Then the next on the slide is cognitive perspective on behaviorists. Cognitive perspective on numeracy. The cognitive also believes that learning is a process. They focus on how learners think, understand, and process numbers. They believe that learners are able to understand and apply number situations through problem solving and mental strategies. Thank you.
My name is Karis Loko, and I'll be taking you through integrating learning theories in numeracy teaching and the learning pyramid and learner engagement. Under this integration, we have the behaviorist, cognitive, and constructive theories, where the behaviorist theory emphasizes repetition, reinforcement, and practice. The cognitive theory focuses on mental processes like problem solving, attention, and memory. The constructivism theory highlights the importance of learners building their own understanding through experiences. Foundational skills may require practice and feedback, and also deeper understanding, such as solving word problems or understanding why a method works. We move on to the learning pyramid and active learning. The learning pyramid suggests that learners retain information better when they are more actively involved in the learning process. We have about 7 stages of the learning pyramid. The first is lecture, for example, listening to a teacher. The second is reading, for example, reading textbooks. Audio visual, like watching videos. Demonstration. Then we have discussions, practice, and teaching others. We can classify the lecture under auditory learners. We can classify reading, audiovisual, and demonstration under so we can classify discussion, practice, and teaching others under kinesthetic learners. We can classify reading, audiovisual, and demonstration under visual learners, and we can classify lecture under auditory learners. Thank you very much. I will hand over to my next colleague.
Okay, so good evening. Please, my name is Hannah, and I'll be taking you through the next slides. So, the next slide is psychological foundations of learning. It says learning is influenced by developmental readiness, memory capacity, attention, and emotion. This says that before the slide says before learning can take place, it needs the developmental steps. That's the you have to be ready. Then you have to get memory capacity, attention, and emotion. That's feelings that you will learn. The the children working memory limitations affect how many steps they can manage in problem solving. It's a research has also shown that learners' belief about their mathematical ability is influenced by performance and persistence. That's Bandura 1997. So Bandura 1997 also believes that um, learners learners learn about learners learn mathematics is influenced by their performance and persistence. Slice Our next slice is problem-based learning as a learning approach. So problem-based learning position learners as active problem solvers who can construct understanding by engaging with realistic tasks. This research tool was constructed by Savary in 2006. It is rather than starting with procedures, learners encounter problems that require them to think, discuss, and test ideas. So in early grade numeracy, contextual problems drawn from learners' daily experiences support meaning and transfer of knowledge. Thank you. I'll hand over to my next colleague.
Okay, so I'm taking over from here and then I'm continuing with the conditions that support effective learning. So the first point is effective learning requires appropriate conditions, including clear goals, structured guidance, opportunities for practice, and constructive feedback. So, this point is actually talking about how learners are going to learn effectively with the approach or the guidelines or the opportunities for practice that the facilitator or the teacher is going to use to teach the children. And then the second one also says that with these conditions, learners may practice errors or disengage from learning. And then the third one also says that teachers therefore play a central role in shaping the learning environment for numeracy and development. So when it comes to this point, I think it is actually talking about the early graders. You see that every child's good foundation of mathematics starts from the early grade. When your mathematics foundation is not really strong from the foundation, that is the early grade part, and then you climax to the top, you don't really get it. So at this point, I think teachers play a central role with how they learn addition, subtraction, and then other forms of mathematics. And then the next slide also talks about meaningful learning in mathematics. So, meaningful learning in mathematics occurs when new ideas are logically connected to what learners already know.
So let's say that let's use this example that see every child knows how okay, not most of them, but then everyone knows about ABCD, fine, but then they can really learn it well when you put it in a song form, like the way when you watch cartoons and then other children activities on TV, the way they do it, when songs and maybe let's say body actions or other things are added to it. I think that is a meaningful way of learning mathematics. And then it's also the second point also says that this constructs with rote learning where information are memorized without understanding. Yes, so as I was saying, some of them they can recite A, B, C, D, A. They can sing it in a song form. But then when you give them pencil and book to write, they can't pen it down. That is it. And then the third point also says that in early grade numeracy, linking new concepts to familiar contexts such as counting objects or shaping items help learners grasp abstract ideas more effectively. So as I was saying earlier, when you're able to get the understanding on how to add and subtract objects, your foundation of mathematics is going to go well. And then all these actions or all these things depends on how the facilitator would help the children to learn. So I think this is where we are going to end. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so to sum up with all what my colleagues have said so far, all what we are actually saying is learning is both a process and a product. So learning is ongoing activity. So how learning is being guided will determine its outcome. So learning here in education talks about how teachers develop certain strategies to assist diverse learners will determine how the outcome of the learner will become successful. So this brings us to our end of presentation. Thank you.